The podcast you are about to listen to is centered on a Christian psychology book titled Mind of the Believer by Pastor Jonah Okwudiri Jacob. For inquiries on how you can order the audio/PDF version of this book or the hard copy, contact Impact Media on the information displayed at the end of this podcast. Pastor Jacob is both author and owner of the rights over Mind of the Believer. Stay blessed.
Usually when we think about power, we picture it as something you have to, forcefully grab.
Right, like an acquisition.
Exactly, like a CEO clawing their way to the top of the corporate ladder, or a politician running a ruthless campaign, or even a general physically conquering a territory.
Yeah, it's a struggle. It's pure friction.
I mean, you literally fight the world to assert your will over it,
You do. It's a very combative external process of taking control. And in that model, power is a finite resource.
Meaning, if I have it, you don't.
Precisely. If you have it, someone else doesn't. So it inherently requires domination. It's a zero-sum game.
But what if that entire paradigm is backwards? What if the ultimate power, like the absolute peak of human agency and control over your reality, isn't something you fight for at all?
Which is a pretty wild concept to wrap your head around.
It really is. Today, we are looking at a framework where this ultimate agency is something you fundamentally already possess.
Right.
It's something you can tragically just give away by leaving the front door open. And most paradoxically of all, it is something you can only ever get back by completely unconditionally surrendering.
Which is the absolute definition of a psychological and philosophical paradox.
It really is.
I mean, to gain total agency, you must give up the illusion of control. And untangling exactly how that works in the human mind is a deeply fascinating exercise.
It is. So our map for this exploration today is a text called Mind of the Believer by Pastor Jonah Jacob Okwudiri.
A really dense, fascinating read.
Very dense. Now, to be incredibly clear right out of the gate, this text is unapologetically rooted in Christian theology.
Yes, it draws very heavily on foundational biblical concepts.
Right, specifically taking us on a journey from the creation narrative in Genesis 1 all the way to the mechanics of salvation in Romans 10.
But our mission for this deep dive is to really look at the blueprints of what Okwudiri is building.
Exactly. We are impartially exploring his arguments so you can understand the psychological and structural framework of his teachings.
Yeah, we want to analyze the actual mechanics of how he argues a deeply held belief physically and mentally changes human reality.
Because that structural analysis is key here.
Oh, absolutely. Because regardless of the worldview you personally hold, Okwudiri is constructing a highly sophisticated psychological architecture.
He's not just doing the whole positive thinking thing.
No, not at all. He isn't just saying, have faith and you'll feel better. He is arguing for a complete ontological shift.
A fundamental rewiring.
Yes, a fundamental rewiring of how a human being interacts with existence. And by looking at this objectively, we can understand how he uses theological concepts to map out a very real, very visceral blueprint for human transformation.
And the narrative arc he uses to map this out is, it's massive.
It covers everything.
Literally. We are starting from this absolute apex of cosmic creation, plummeting into what he describes as a devastating fall, and then climbing back up through a highly specific internalized mechanism.
So let's start at that apex.
Let's do it. Okwudiri begins his framework with a claim that places humanity at the absolute top of the hierarchy of creation.
He does, and he anchors this firmly in the ancient concepts found in Genesis 1.
The very beginning.
Right. Humanity is described as being made in the, quote, image of God, and given what Okwudiri calls dominion over the earth.
Dominion. That is it's a heavy word.
It is. And what's particularly fascinating about Okwudiri's interpretation is that he extends this dominion far beyond just managing the physical environment.
Like plants and animals.
Right, flora and fauna. He explicitly states that humanity was given dominion over everything, which uniquely includes dominion even over spirits.
I want to pause right there, actually, because dominion is a heavily loaded word.
Oh, definitely.
In a modern context, it carries a lot of baggage. When we hear dominion, we usually think of tyrant.
We immediately translate it to domination.
Exactly. We think of ruling with an iron fist, or exploiting natural resources, or subjecting other people to our will.
We think of building an empire.
Right. An empire built on force.
But if we analyze Okwudiri's use of the term, and truly the historical, theological use of the term in its original context, that is explicitly not what he means.
So what does he mean then?
In this framework, dominion is fundamentally about responsibility. It is not about extraction.
Oh, interesting. So it's not taking things from the earth.
No, it is about cultivation.
So it's stewardship.
Exactly. It is stewardship on a cosmic scale. To be made in the image of a creator, in this ancient context, didn't mean you physically looked like the creator.
Right, it's not a physical resemblance.
No, it meant you were the functional representative of that creator in the world. You were stationed here to reflect the character of the creator into the creation.
Wow.
Therefore, your dominion is the immense responsibility of maintaining order, cultivating growth, and facilitating flourishing in the reality around you.
It's an acknowledgement of an inherent human capacity for immense good.
Yeah.
Let me try out an analogy here, because I think it helps ground this massive abstract theological concept into something tangible for you listening.
Go for it.
It's like being handed the keys to a massive, incredibly complex, multi-million-dollar estate.
Okay, I like that.
You aren't just given the master suite to lounge around in and drink champagne. You are made responsible for the entire property.
You're running the show.
Right. You are the head gardener, the chief engineer, the security director. The whole thing is under your care.
So you have authority, but
that means if a pipe bursts in the basement and ruins the foundation, it's on you. If the gardens wither, it's on you.
that is a solid starting point. But let's take that estate analogy a step further to truly capture O'Queedy's concept of dominion.
Okay, where does he take it?
Well, particularly the part about having dominion over spirits. In O'Queedy's framework, you aren't just managing the physical pipes and the roses.
Right, it's not just the material stuff.
No, you are responsible for the atmosphere of the estate.
The atmosphere.
Yes. You are responsible for the morale of the staff, the emotional resonance of the home, the unseen forces of anxiety or peace that dictate how the estate operates.
Oh, wow.
You are managing the invisible architecture of reality just as much as the visible.
That is an incredibly heavy burden.
That's massive.
Which leads to a crucial question about human psychology, right? How does placing a human being at the absolute top of a spiritual and physical hierarchy change their day-to-day psychological posture?
That is the core question.
I mean, if someone truly internalizes that they are at the apex of creation with that specific type of atmospheric cosmic responsibility, how does that rewire their brain when they wake up on a Tuesday morning and have to go to work?
Well, this is where O'Queedy's theology directly intersects with cognitive psychology.
How so?
The stories we tell ourselves about our origin and our purpose dictate our behavior.
Right, our internal narrative.
Exactly. If your internal narrative is that you're a random accident of the universe, or if you view yourself as a fundamentally flawed, powerless creature entirely at the mercy of your environment.
Which a lot of people do, to be fair.
They do. And if that's your view, your psychological posture is going to be profoundly defensive.
You're just bracing for impact.
Yes. You will live in a state of reaction. You will wait to see what the room does to you.
You're just trying to survive the weather.
Precisely. You're constantly seeking shelter. But if you internalize O'Queedy's premise that you are purposefully designed for this high responsibility dominion.
That you are the authorized manager of your environment.
Right. Your posture shifts from defensive to active agency.
You walk into a chaotic room, not wondering how the chaos will ruin your day, but recognizing that it is your inherent design to bring order to that chaos.
Exactly. You don't react to the weather. You are responsible for building the shelter.
It demands a level of self-respect and, frankly, a level of serious, unyielding accountability that is almost terrifying.
It is completely terrifying. I mean, the psychological weight of that framing is immense because it removes all your excuses.
You can't blame anyone else.
No. It means your actions, your passing thoughts, the way you speak to a stranger, and your private moral choices all echo outwards with profound structural significance.
You are constantly shaping reality.
Constantly.
And this immense weight, this terrifying level of responsibility, makes what happens next in O'Queedy's narrative all the more fascinating.
And honestly, a bit more understandable.
Yeah, because we have the keys to the estate. We are at the apex. We have this ultimate active agency.
Right.
And then we just drop the keys, we walk away. This is what O'Queedy frames as the fall.
Yes, the fall from grace.
And he describes this in very vivid, dramatic terms.
He does. But the mechanics of how this fall happens are the most critical part of his entire framework.
Right, because it's not a battle.
No, this isn't a story of humanity fighting a valiant cosmic battle and being overpowered by a stronger rival force.
It isn't a hostile takeover of the estate.
Exactly.
No, it's characterized by humanity voluntarily turning away from divine guidance and deliberately giving up their authority to darkness.
It's an abdication.
An abdication. But I have to push back on this, or at least challenge the psychological logic of it.
Let's hear it.
If we are perfectly designed for this role, with this divine software pre-installed, why on earth would we voluntarily walk away from the control panel?
It seems counterintuitive.
Completely.
Yeah.
Who willingly hands over the keys to the universe? Psychologically, that makes no sense. Does Okwiti explain the motive behind self-sabotaging on a cosmic scale?
He does. And if we look closely at the framework, the motive is intrinsically linked to the terror of the responsibility we just discussed.
Okay. The weight of it.
Yes. When you are the absolute steward of the estate, you bear the total weight of its success or failure.
Right.
But what happens if you decide you don't want the burden of reflecting the Creator's will? What if you decide you want to define good and evil for yourself on your own terms?
Without the oversight of the original architect.
Exactly. You want the authority without the accountability.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You want to throw the parties at the estate, but you don't want to fix the plumbing.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the tragic irony Okwiti points out is that the moment you sever yourself from the source of that authority, the divine architect, you don't become a free, independent ruler.
You don't get the freedom you thought you were getting.
No, you just lose your dominion entirely. You become subject to the very environment you were supposed to be managing.
You become a victim of the weather again.
Exactly. By trying to grab autonomous power, you abdicate your actual structural power.
The psychological implications of an abdication are vastly different from those of a defeat, you know?
They really are.
Like, if an invading army takes my estate, I am a victim. I can harbor righteous anger. I can plot a rebellion.
Your identity is intact. You're just oppressed.
Right. But if I leave the front door open, disable the alarm, and walk away because I got tired of the maintenance.
The resulting loss is entirely on your shoulders.
Yeah, that creates a very specific, deeply corrosive kind of internal void.
It does. You aren't mourning a theft. You are living with the haunting reality that you chose the lesser path.
And Okwiti uses a profoundly visceral image to describe the result of this abdication.
He talks about light being withdrawn from the world.
Yes, it is a physical representation of this separation from the divine source. I find that phrasing light being withdrawn really striking.
It's very specific.
Right, because he doesn't say a dark, evil fog rolled in and suffocated everyone. He says the light was withdrawn.
Meaning the darkness isn't an active force.
Exactly. It implies that the darkness isn't a substance of its own. It's just the terrifying reality of an empty space where the light used to be.
That is a brilliant theological and psychological distinction.
I mean, darkness in this context is the absence of a required element.
Like how cold is just the absence of heat.
Right. The void that humanity experiences after the fall isn't a foreign parasite. It is the natural consequence of a severed connection.
And if we connect this to the broader human experience, Okwiti is using these massive theological concepts to explain a feeling that almost every human being intuitively understands.
The modern epidemic of aimlessness.
Exactly. Think about how prevalent the feeling of profound emptiness is today.
We see it everywhere.
We really do. This pervasive sense that despite having all our basic survival needs met, despite our technology and our comforts, something fundamental and structural is missing from our core.
We feel an ambient, low-level dread constantly.
Yes. Okwiti is aligning this spiritual separation with that intensely human feeling of losing one's center.
It's like wandering around a massive pitch-black house.
Back to the estate.
Yeah, back to the estate. You know you're supposed to live there. You can feel the vastness of the rooms around you, but you can't find the blueprints.
And you have no idea where the light switches are.
You're just stumbling into the furniture of your own life.
And because that internal space was originally designed to hold something immense, that divine connection and purpose,
It feels incredibly heavy when it is empty.
the void has a weight to it.
It really does.
Yeah.
But logically, if the loss of dominion was an abdication and not a permanent physical destruction of our inherent design, well, that implies something quite hopeful, doesn't it?
It implies a way back.
Right. If I voluntarily walked away from the control panel in the basement of the estate, the control panel wasn't uninstalled.
It's technically still there. The wiring still exists.
This is the massive pivot in Okwiti's entire framework, isn't it?
It is the absolute core of it. The architecture of humanity wasn't erased.
The estate hasn't been burned to the ground.
No, it is simply under the wrong management because the authorized stewards handed over the keys.
The capacity for dominion remains dormant in the hardware.
Which means, structurally speaking, a mechanism must exist to take that authority back.
We just need to figure out how to turn the power back on.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of restoration. Because O'Queedy doesn't leave the reader stumbling around in the dark.
Thankfully.
Yeah, he offers a highly specific, highly detailed path back to the light. And this path centers entirely on one word: belief.
Yes. Specifically, belief in the core tenets of the Christian faith.
Right. O'Queedy relies heavily here on the theology of the New Testament, particularly Romans chapter 10.
The foundational elements are the acknowledgement of Christ's sacrifice, the physical reality of the resurrection, and the concept that salvation comes strictly through faith.
The reconnection of the circuitry.
Exactly. And it comes through faith, not through earning it back with good deeds.
I want to read a specific sentence directly from O'Queedy's text, because the wording is so absolute and frankly a little jarring.
Go ahead.
He writes, "All that man has to do in order to avail himself of the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus is to believe the above truths."
All that man has to do. That is an incredibly loaded phrase in theology.
It really is, and I have to challenge O'Queedy here, because on paper, all you have to do is believe sounds suspiciously, almost insultingly easy.
It sounds like a cheat code.
It sounds like checking a box on a software terms and conditions page. You scroll rapidly to the bottom, hit I agree, and boom, your cosmic software is updated and your dominion is restored.
And obviously, human experience tells us it's not that simple.
Right. If it's that simple, why isn't everyone walking around as fully actualized masters of their reality?
Because you are equating belief with intellectual assent.
Okay, break that down for me.
O'Queedy is acutely aware of that distinction. Giving intellectual assent to a historical claim, saying, yes, I agree that a man named Jesus lived and died, is checking the terms and conditions box.
It's just agreeing with a fact.
Yes. But O'Queedy argues that true belief, the kind that actually restores dominion, is not surface-level agreement. He calls it internalizing truths.
How did that actually work in practice? Let me give you an analogy, and you tell me if this maps to what O'Queedy is saying.
All right, let's hear it.
It's the difference between reading a manual on how to swim and actually trusting the water.
I like where this is going.
I mean, I can read the manual all day, I can memorize the physics of buoyancy, I can pass a written exam on the exact angle my arm needs to enter the water.
You have all the facts.
Right. But if you throw me into the deep end of the pool, and I immediately panic, hold my breath, and thrash around trying to fight the water.
You don't actually believe the water will hold you up.
Exactly. I just know the theory of swimming. True belief is relaxing my muscles and letting the water carry my weight.
That analogy is excellent for explaining the difference between knowing facts and applying trust.
But I hear a but coming.
But to capture the magnitude of what O'Queedy is claiming, we need to escalate that analogy.
Okay, escalate it.
O'Queedy isn't just saying you learn to relax in the water. He is arguing that the act of true internalized belief is an active structural change to human consciousness.
A structural change.
In theological terms, it is an ontological shift.
Okay, let's unpack that. Ontological meaning, a change in the actual nature of our being.
Exactly. Ontology is the study of being. When O'Queedy says belief changes you, he doesn't mean you just adopted a more positive life philosophy.
It's not just a new mindset.
No, he argues that when you genuinely internalize these truths, the truth that you were made for dominion, that you broke the world through your abdication, and that through Christ's sacrifice, the cosmic gap is bridged, you are fundamentally rewired. You aren't just a drowning man who finally learned to float. You are given gills.
You are reshaped from the inside out.
The belief itself is the metaphysical mechanism that reconnects the circuitry and turns the light back on in the estate.
So if I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone listening to this right now, I'm thinking, okay, I understand the difference between reading the manual and actually trusting the water.
Right.
I understand that O'Queedy is claiming this trust physically and spiritually rewires me. But how does a person practically force their brain to trust the water?
You can't.
Exactly. You can't just clench your fists and will yourself into structurally changing your own consciousness.
No, sheer mental force doesn't work.
If my default state is panic, how do I activate this internalized belief?
You are absolutely right. You cannot will yourself into an ontological shift through sheer mental force. And this leads us directly into the most practical and perhaps the most deeply paradoxical part of O'Queedy's entire framework.
Okay, lay it on me.
The activation mechanism he provides isn't a mental exercise in trying harder. The activation mechanism is surrender.
Surrender. This is where the soaring theology hits the hard pavement of daily reality.
It really is.
Okwiti provides a highly practical starting point for this surrender, and it takes the form of a specific, incredibly concise prayer.
Yes, drawing straight from Romans 10.
Right. He writes, "Lord Jesus, I come to you today. I know I am a sinner. I believe you died for me, and on the third day you rose again that I might be justified."
It is remarkably stark in its simplicity.
There's no flowery, archaic language. There are no elaborate, multi-step physical rituals attached to it. It's just a direct, painfully honest transmission.
It gets straight to the point.
But the core paradox here is what I want to zero in on. Okwiti is explicitly telling us that in order to reclaim our lost dominion, our ultimate agency, our power over our lives and our environment, we have to start by completely and totally surrendering to something outside of ourselves.
And this directly attacks the modern understanding of control.
Oh, absolutely.
In our hyper-individualized society, we are aggressively taught that to have agency, we must assert absolute microscopic control over every single variable in our lives.
The whole optimization culture.
Yes. We have to biohack our sleep, micromanage our diets, fiercely defend our boundaries, and manifest our desires through sheer force of will.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
It is. But Okwiti's psychological framework argues the exact opposite. He argues that trying to maintain absolute ego-driven control is precisely what keeps us separated from our true power.
It is the thrashing in the water.
Exactly.
It is an astounding paradox. You are giving up the illusion of total control in order to gain actual functional agency.
It's a complete inversion.
It makes me think of surfing.
Surfing.
Yeah, think about it. If you paddle out into the ocean and you try to fight the water, you try to force the ocean to do what you want, or try to command the tide to stop, you are going to drown.
You'll just exhaust yourself.
Right. You are exhausted and powerless. But if you surrender to the rhythm of the wave, if you align yourself with the force that is infinitely more massive and powerful than you are,
You suddenly have the power to ride the ocean.
exactly, you gain incredible speed and direction, not by defeating the wave, but by submitting to it.
That is a powerful visualization, but to align it perfectly with Okwiti, we need to acknowledge that in his framework, you don't even own the surfboard.
Oh, man.
The board was provided for you. And if we look closely at the specific wording of Okwiti's prayer, we can see the exact psychological steps required to get on that board.
Let's look at the wording.
The very first crucial step, before any mention of belief or resurrection, is a blunt admission of fault. I know I am a sinner.
Psychologically speaking, why is that specific admission the required key in the ignition? Why start with the negative?
Because it shatters the ego. It is the definitive moment you stop fighting the ocean and admit you are drowning. To say, I know I am a sinner in the context of Okwiti's framework is not about groveling.
It's not about feeling worthless.
No, it is about radical ownership. It is saying, I am the one who left the door to the estate open. I am the one who abdicated my authority.
The void, the chaos, the aimlessness I feel right now is the direct result of my own misalignment.
Yes. You cannot fix a structural flaw in a building until the lead engineer first acknowledges that the foundation is cracked and that they are the one who poured the concrete wrong.
Wow. So it's not about wallowing in self-deprecation or building a complex around guilt. It's about taking extreme ownership of the failure.
Exactly. And notice the psychological brilliance of what happens next in the prayer.
Okay, what happens?
That brutal admission of fault is followed instantly in the very next breath by an embrace of an external solution. I believe you died for me, that I might be justified.
So the mental pivot is, I broke it, I take full responsibility for breaking it, but I believe you possess the power to fix it, and I am actively stepping into that fix.
Yes, and that specific transaction of surrender and belief is the moment the circuitry reconnects.
That is the point of justification.
Right. Through this surrender, Okwiti argues, one's legal and spiritual standing is immediately restored. You are justified.
You have the keys to the estate back.
But the dominion you reclaim looks very different now. It's no longer about trying to ruthlessly rule the external world.
Yeah.
The restored dominion starts entirely with self-mastery.
Mastering our own internal landscape, our thoughts, our impulses.
Right. Okwiti suggests that once the connection is restored, the believer becomes an active participant in their own ongoing transformation.
You don't just say the prayer, sit back on the couch. and wait for God to perfectly manage your life.
Not at all. True belief requires you to aggressively master your internal environment. You have to actively choose, moment by moment, to align your thoughts with the reality of your restored dominion.
Okay, but this is where I have to call out what looks like a massive contradiction in O'Queedy's logic.
Let's hear it.
Earlier, you explained that this internalized belief causes an ontological shift. It rewires the hardware. It turns the lights back on in the estate immediately.
Yes, justification.
Right, you called it justification.
Yeah.
But now, O'Queedy is saying we have to aggressively master our thoughts.
Right.
And that it's this intense, ongoing process.
Right.
Which is it? Is it an instant magic wand fix where the circuitry is reconnected? Or is it a grueling, lifelong struggle to learn how to manage the estate?
Well,
Because you can't really have both. If the lights are on, why am I still stumbling in the dark?
that is the most profound tension in Christian theology, and it is entirely by design. You are pointing out the difference between justification and sanctification.
Justification and sanctification.
Yes. And understanding the difference between the two is the only way to make sense of the reality of the journey O'Queedy describes.
Break those down for me.
Let's go back to the estate.
Always back to the estate.
It's a good analogy. Justification, the moment of true, surrendering belief, is a legal and structural reality.
Okay.
It is the moment the judge bangs the gavel and says the estate legally belongs to you again. The power from the city grid is officially reconnected to the main breaker.
So that happens in an instant.
Yes, you are legally and spiritually restored. That is the ontological shift.
Okay, so the power is to the house.
Yes, but sanctification is what happens next.
Which is?
You open the front door of your legally restored estate, you flip the switch, the lights come on, and you realize that because the house was abandoned for years, there is trash everywhere.
Oh man. The pipes are still rusted?
Exactly. Wild animals are living in the kitchen.
That is a bleak picture.
But it's accurate. Sanctification is the grueling, moment-by-moment, lifelong process of actually cleaning up the house.
Oh, I see. The power is on so you can clean it now, which you couldn't do in the dark. But the work still has to be done.
That makes incredible sense. The legal standing is instant, but the experiential reality requires immense labor.
And this is where O'Queedy proves he isn't just selling a theoretical, feel-good philosophy.
No, he is brutally, intensely realistic about what happens after that initial moment of surrender.
He does not promise a friction-free existence.
Many modern belief systems or self-help gurus try to do that. They promise that if you just believe hard enough or vibrate at the right frequency, all your problems will evaporate.
Just manifest it away.
Right. But O'Queedy rejects that entirely. He is upfront that this path involves profound doubts. It involves agonizing struggles and inevitable setbacks that will test the very core of your faith.
And I think for anyone listening, this is where the theology actually becomes useful.
How so?
Because it's easy to feel perfectly aligned with the universe when you are sitting in a quiet room reading a book.
Sure.
It's significantly harder when you get a devastating medical diagnosis on a Tuesday afternoon, or when you lose your job.
Or when you face a profound betrayal.
Exactly. Or when you look at the sheer overwhelming cruelty in the daily news cycle and feel your internal light flickering.
It's incredibly hard. When the reality of a broken world crashes into your restored dominion, it creates immense friction.
But O'Queedy reframes that friction, doesn't he?
He does. He doesn't see those doubts or those terrible Tuesdays as evidence that your belief is broken or that God has abandoned the estate again.
He frames those challenges as the exact mechanism required for growth.
Yes. They are the essential stepping stones to a richer, more resilient state of being.
If we look at this through the lens of human psychology, why does he frame struggle as a necessary component? Why couldn't the justification just magically clean the house for us?
Because if belief is a muscle that reshapes us from the inside out, then doubts, pain, and setbacks are the heavy resistance training required to build that muscle.
It's like going to the gym.
Exactly. Think about physical hypertrophy. You cannot build a strong physical body by lying in bed.
Right.
The muscle fibers must be subjected to stress, they must tear slightly, and then they rebuild stronger to handle the load.
In the exact same way, your internal conviction, your spiritual and psychological resilience cannot become robust if it is never tested against the crushing weight of reality.
It's the concept of the forge.
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's a classic one for a reason.
You don't get a razor-sharp, unbreakable sword by just pouring liquid metal into a mold and letting it cool softly in the sun.
No, that metal will be brittle.
It will shatter the first time it strikes something hard. To make strong steel, It requires intense, blinding heat, and it requires the relentless, violent pressure of a hammer beating down on it over and over and over again.
The heat and the pressure are the exact tools that align the molecular structure of the steel to make it functionally unbreakable.
That is sanctification translated into psychological resilience.
When you encounter a massive doubt, when the hammer strikes, and you actively choose to master your thoughts, rejecting the panic and realigning yourself with your core belief anyway, you have just reinforced that neural pathway.
You've cleaned one more room in the estate.
You are actively participating in your own transformation.
And what's truly remarkable about this entire architecture we've been unpacking, and we touched on this briefly when we were initially preparing to dive into Okwiti's text, is the undeniable universal resonance of this framework.
It is universally profound.
Even if you, the listener, are approaching this deep dive strictly as an objective observer, completely removing the specific Christian theology of Genesis and Romans.
The underlying psychological architecture hits on absolute truths of the human condition.
Like the idea of unlocking inherent potential.
Yes. The deep-seated recognition that human beings possess an innate capacity to enact immense good in their environment.
The understanding that trying to ruthlessly control everything around us leads to misery.
And that we must strive to overcome our own ego to become actualized.
The concept that true strength requires stepping into the forge of adversity. These are concepts that resonate across almost all diverse worldviews, Stoic philosophies, and modern clinical psychological disciplines.
It speaks to the absolute core of how we are wired.
We all feel the ghostly weight of that original design, that potential to be stewards of our reality.
We all feel the sickening void when we are disconnected from purpose, wandering in the dark.
And we all intuitively know, even if we fight it, that finding our way back to sanity requires some form of surrender to a truth larger than our own immediate selfish desires.
Okwiti is simply providing a highly specific, historically and theologically grounded blueprint for how that exact mechanism operates.
He gives the void a name, he gives the dominion a history, and he provides a definitive, structural method of activation through faith in Christ.
He maps the invisible territory.
We have covered an immense, staggering amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started at the cosmic apex with humanity's original, high-responsibility dominion. The beautiful, terrifying idea that we were designed to be the authorized stewards of creation, holding the keys to the atmosphere of the estate.
We then explored the profound darkness of the fall.
Right. We learned to see it not as a defeat by a rival power, but as a voluntary, tragic abdication of our own authority that resulted in the existential withdrawal of light.
Leaving us with the heavy void of aimlessness.
And finally, we unpacked Okwiti's specific blueprint for reclaiming that lost authority. And the ultimate takeaway here is the paradox of power.
We do not take our dominion back through force.
We cannot fight the ocean. We reclaim our agency through the internalized, inside-out ontological transformation of true belief.
We surrender our desperate need for control, we take extreme ownership of our misalignment, and we trust the water to hold us.
And practically speaking, the core application of this deep dive is recognizing that acknowledging your inherent capacity for good is only step one.
Deliberately, actively, and aggressively mastering your thoughts to align with that higher purpose, cleaning the rooms of your estate while the hammer of reality beats down on you, is the actual blueprint for attaining inner peace and robust agency.
Is lifelong resistance training for your soul.
It is the shift from being a terrified, passive observer of the weather to becoming an active participant in your own ongoing structural transformation.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you with a final thought. A question to mull over as you step back out into the friction of your day, based on the architecture Okwiti has laid out for us.
It's a great question to reflect on.
If it is true that our deeply held, internalized beliefs genuinely possess the power to completely rewire our internal reality and dictate our external actions, what incredible, unimaginable things might be possible in your own life if you finally stopped hedging your bets?
What if you fully embrace the transformative power of your deepest convictions?
What if you stopped thrashing against the waves of your circumstances, surrendered the illusion of control to the truth you know is there, and finally started riding the ocean?
That's the challenge.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the mind and spirit today. Until next time, keep diving deep.